Okay, we're going to talk about women. And the question is, how are the developments of these different periods affecting women? And that's usually the question you'll have, is what is affecting women in this period? Or how is... So you've got a period, right, and discuss the changes in the role of women from 1650 to 1800, right? And so what you'll have to do is you have to think about what's going on in that period. So as I said before, what you need to remember is the blank timeline, because it's sort of like, oh, I need to know the general things that are happening that might be affecting women, or might be affecting politics, or might be affecting whatever aspect of society is questioned in the question. So, in this, you have to be able to think, what are these social trends? How is the Enlightenment affecting women? How is the agricultural revolution in Britain affecting women? How is the commercial revolution affecting Britain, right? The expanding commerce across Europe affecting women. So, and then you can think, oh, that's actually an easy question. Because you're like, oh, the Enlightenment, there's new ideas about rights and things like that, but Rousseau, blah, 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 right? Or, how is the commercial revolution affecting women? Well, women aren't merchants themselves, but it's expanding the middle class. So there's more middle-class women. So for those women, their lives are better, right? There's sort of this idea of the domestic role, certainly influenced by Rousseau as well. And, the agricultural revolution, right? We talked about heavier machines or heavier tools and plows, which made it more difficult for women to participate in agricultural production in Britain and in the West. Whereas what we also see as part of this commercial revolution is more women involved in cottage industry, right? In producing textiles and things like that. So you have to be able to look at a time period and then think what's going on and then apply it to whatever subject you're talking about. So that's what we'll be doing. Renaissance. Now, Renaissance is a cultural and intellectual movement. So how does it affect women on the ground? Not really. But amongst the elite women in those elite families that might be participating in the Renaissance, there are some examples of women that are educated, that are allowed to be educated, that become humanists, scholars, and one example of that is Christine de Pizan. And so, for most people in Italy during the Italian Renaissance, we don't see a new role for women. Because guess what? For most people during the Italian Renaissance, we don't see a new role for them. The Renaissance is an intellectual and cultural movement of the elites. It's a new way of thinking and a new concept of the world, right? This secular, this humanism, new interest in things, secularism, new outlook. But it's not affecting most people socially. And for women, it's not resulting in a new role for them, except in some elite circles. Okay. The Reformation is similarly, on the face of it, how is that affecting women? But when you think about it, the Reformation is emphasizing marriage. And therefore, for women, it's emphasizing the role of the woman as a mother, as a wife. And so that domestic role of the women is clear. It's certainly emphasized in Protestant ideas, amongst Protestant ideas. So, and this goes back to Luther saying that, the church is wrong, this separate caste of priests and nuns, the religious, should not in fact be separate from the people, and therefore, this celibacy of the Catholic religious orders should not be something that's always that is practiced. So therefore, let's have marriage, right? Marriage is the ideal state. And therefore, for women, Luther, Calvin, their wives are seen as an important part of their ministry, as an important part of their family, and of creating a good home. So a good example there is the Katrina von Bora, who is the wife of Luther. She's the former nun who, like Luther, leaves the Catholic religious order she's a part of, and gets married to Luther. So that's an example of this new role of the woman. And remember that there is some resistance from nuns to Protestantism, because the nunnery was a place where women were independent from men in many cases. Now, some nunneries were more or less controlled by male priests, but some were independent. And also, the learned women of the Middle Ages were the religious orders, the women in these religious orders. They were the ones that had access to education and books. And so that is challenged, right? And many nuns resist that, because the new expectation for women is that they are in the home. And so that idea of women being independent of husbands is no longer an option with these new Protestant ideas. Now, on the Catholic Reformation side, we see that Catholic women, we see they're imbued with a new sort of a new spirituality, a new emphasis on trying to spread the Catholic faith. So an example of this is the Ursuline sisters, who create a series of schools in Europe to educate young women. So the Ursuline sisters are an example of a new religious order that comes out of the Catholic Reformation, and they're educating young women. And why do we want to educate women? So that they can be good mothers and raise their kids to be good Catholics. And so both sides see the opportunity for women to help perpetuate their faith, right? For Protestants, the woman would be a good Protestant mother. And for Catholics, they want to educate women also, so that they can also spread, maintain those beliefs, those Catholic beliefs in their families. Okay. Now, when we're talking about the Reformation, you can also talk about, as we mentioned before, education is always an interesting thing about the Reformation, how it spurs an interest in reading because of the Lutheran notion of sola scriptura, that the Bible is the sole basis for Christian faith. And so that affects women amongst the better off families, in that they would be expected to learn to read so they can read the Bible to their children.